cold fever, stay at home. Flu-like symptoms or any respiratory illness, stay at home. If you do not have urgent matters to attend to, stay at home. By order under the Disaster Risk Management Act, stay at home. If you must go to the market, make a list and shop by it. Do not stay longer than necessary. Make a list and shop by it. Avoid touching surfaces. Avoid crowds and standing close to you.
Nice. So the Disaster Risk Management Act has been in place since the start of the pandemic last year. Lockdowns, curfews, and protocols have been put in place, but how effective are they? Well, here to share more about this is Inspector of Police at the JCF, Sean J. Mitchell. Inspector, good morning and welcome to Smile Jamaica, sir.
Pleasant morning and thanks for having me.
I read it already. So that came in because of the pandemic.
No, the Disaster Risk Management Act was first established in 2015, in February 19th, 2015.
Okay. So what's the difference? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Right. So the current pandemic has required that the activation of the Disaster Risk Management Act be done. And you'd recall sometime last year when the Prime Minister declared Jamaica a disaster zone. Having declared Jamaica a disaster zone now, it gives the Prime Minister the powers now to create orders under the Act. And from that now, we have different measures such as the curfew orders, the social distancing requirements, the suspension of certain activities. So having now declared the country a disaster zone, the activation of the Disaster Risk Management Act became very appropriate.
Right, and then it would have been amended, obviously based on whatever is going on in the country at the time to make sure that it's relevant and the measures in place are relevant to combat what is happening. My question to you is, Sir Sean J., if it is, some people feel the act is there, but it doesn't have any teeth because they see what's still going on. They see people flouting curfews. They see people maskless. They see. What are your thoughts on how the act is landing in terms of efficiency and effectiveness?
Right. So the act does have some loopholes, and it's not a definitive situation where the police can enforce the provisions under the act just by virtue of a breach. And what I mean is, for example, if someone is caught not wearing a mask, that in and of itself is not particularly a breach, but the breach occurs when the police now instructs that person to wear a mask and the person refuses. So that's when the breaches occur. Similarly, if there's somebody out after curfew hours and they are stopped by the police and having given an account of themselves, they are unable to say that they are either heading home or they are coming from a particular event and they will be heading home shortly. So now the police can enforce the provisions under that particular circumstance. Outside of that, the instruction is that the police gives you an instruction and you are now required to comply with the instruction, and failure now to comply with the instruction, that's when you commit a breach.
Well, Inspector,
so,
let me, do you have enough resources to actually police what's going on the streets? Because many of us see people flouting the rules. The mask issue, for example. I mean, do you have enough resources for your officers to be stopping everybody who does not conform to wearing a mask? To be able to make them liable or prosecutable under the Act?
Right. To be honest, there will never be enough resources for most things that we are doing. But we do try our best. We give instructions, and for the most part, our citizens have been compliant with instructions. But what we want for our citizens to do is to not wait on the police to give you an instruction for you to comply. The Disaster Risk Management Act and the orders under the Act are for your protection. It is there to help protect you, to help keep you safe. And not only you, because once you are safe, your family members will be safe as well as the extended members of your community. So think not only about yourself. Yes, it's a little difficult to breathe in the mask sometimes, but it's there for a particular purpose. We're trying to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And as you're aware, we're now in a period where there is a peak happening. and we want to mitigate or intervene in that peak so that we don't have a real national disaster. So it's important that persons wear their masks, they comply with the instructions of the police, look at the provisions under the Act. You can find the Act and the orders under the Act at opm.gov.jm, and you can just look at what the restrictions are and try your best to just work with what the restrictions are and comply with instructions.
Yep. Inspector, Deputy Superintendent of the Manchester Police, Mr. Lloyd Darby, said efforts of the police would be much more effective if the Act did not prevent prosecution until after a violator is warned. How do you warn someone? Just tell them, say, I'm warning you? That's how you warn someone?
So for example, if I notice Neville on the streets and he's not wearing his mask, and I indicate to Neville, please put on your mask. And Neville tells Sanjay that he's not going to wear his mask, that's when it becomes a prosecutable offense. If Neville had complied with the initial instruction, then that's the end of the matter. He puts on his mask and then he's gone, and that's it. So, right, the DSP does have a point. It's only prosecutable once a warning is given and you fail to comply with the instruction under that particular warning.
So can that be changed to, I guess that would require a mask mandate then, right? So that would require would that be an amendment to the orders, or is that law, or what role, form would that take?
I suppose that's a matter for the AG to look into and to see how we can amend the Act to have the offences as direct breaches under the law.
Do you think that's necessary, Inspector? Would that help you in your fight? Would that help us
it certainly
in our
will.
fight? Yeah. Okay.
Inspector, the other thing I noticed, that the Prime Minister, the government, the ministry, they have said only 10 folks. But I see buses with more than 10 people. It doesn't work for public transport? What?
There are restrictions for public transportation as well. There are restrictions for churches, there are restrictions for funerals, there are restrictions for stores. What we try to do on the road as police officers, we try to, as best as possible, try to enforce these provisions. So there will be breaches. Persons are definitely trying to find ways around the law. They're still packing a lot of persons into the buses, but for the most part, we are having a situation where people are complying with the instructions, and we want to commend the citizens that actually do comply with the instructions. But in the meantime, we just want to urge other citizens that the provisions must be complied with if we are to enter a stage where the virus is either gone or we are at a very low level of positivity. So we want persons to be able to understand that everybody has a role to play in this fight.
Well, we know public transport is an issue. I was reading the other day where somebody said the police stopped a bus that they were in and everybody put on their masks, and the police let the bus go and everybody took it off. So personal responsibility is a huge part of this, and we don't have a lot of Jamaicans who are exercising that responsibility, especially, Inspector, with these events. That some members of the public are irate because they think the cops are looking the other way at some events that are being staged, depending on where the events are happening. We can see, some of us, the other day I went somewhere and I saw cars lining both streets with a proper event happening as if no COVID is keeping. So how are you folks keeping a lid on those?
Right. So once a breach is reported to us, and believe me, there are a number of breaches that we attend to on a daily basis, on a nightly basis. So, for example, the police have locked down well over 3,000 to 4,000 events already, and for most of those events, no one or persons were prosecuted except probably the promoter, who was prosecuted under a different act, which is the Noise Abatement Act. It's difficult though. Their persons are intent on having their parties, their gatherings. They're still having friends over. They're still having loud music playing, and we just want to urge citizens, and this is important, that people take personal responsibility for their safety and for the safety of our communities. While we can shut down a few parties, and I know the argument has been made that police particularly targeting one set of parties, that's not the case. If we attend an event, and based on what I explained already, if the person at that particular event complies with the instructions of the police and leaves the venue once they were warned to leave, then there's no offense committed and the persons are allowed to go. In other instances, when we have prosecuted persons, it's when they refuse to adhere to the requests of the police and in that particular circumstance. And that's why we had those particular prosecutions. So it's not a case where the police are trying to police one set of persons and another set we give them a blight. No, we are applying the law as it is very objectively and very fairly as possible.
Inspector, you just said that, well, I'm told that I can't have a party with more than 10 people. I'm having a party with 50 people. I'm over the curfew time, and you said if you come in and ask us to leave, we didn't do anything wrong.
Well, you would have been in breach of the curfew orders, but in terms of a prosecutor, in terms of us prosecuting you, once you comply with that instruction from the police, then you can leave and that's it. However,
but that would mean, sir, that I can have a party, and if the police don't come, I can go till the police come and shut me down. And if you come at 2 o'clock in the morning and say must go home, and I go home, then I don't do anything wrong according to what you just said.
Well, if you are the promoter of that particular party, you can be prosecuted under the Noise Abatement Act and the Towns and Communities.
Possibly.
Yes.
So
yes,
we need to look at the Disaster Risk Management Act, maybe, because maybe that's the issue, is that you are enforcing what the law says and you're acting within the confines of the act. Perhaps it is that the act needs some more
teeth. Yeah. We have to go, sir. Thank you very much. Stay safe, please. And thanks for speaking.
Thank you for your service as well.
Yep. Inspector Sean J. Mitchell of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Well, I guess that explains it, right? Because you just go and run it until you see 2 police and then...
I don't understand that.
Okay.
I mean, I understand what he says, don't get me wrong. But it would mean that until they come, because I remember I saw a flyer and it says like from 4 till the blue light come.
Oh, wow.
I'm serious.
And if you do it this week and the blue light comes and you disperse, what stops you from doing it again next week if you know that when the blue light comes, you disperse and you're okay?
Yeah.
Crazy.
What's next?
Progress, not perfection. We're going to be right back for a discussion about food and business. Yep, that's what we're talking about when we come back.
The coronavirus